hello, you lovely lot. Welcome back to the show, and a big thank you for tuning in this week. It is episode 2 of season 3, and we've got a great show in store for you guys today. If anyone is listening to the show for the first time, I'd like to say a big hello and welcome, and a huge thank you for taking a chance on our little show and choosing to share some of your day with us. To our awesome returning listeners, sup? Thank you for coming back. This week on the show, I am excited to welcome back a returning guest and good friend of mine, Amy Lucivero. You guys will remember Amy from season 1's episode on nutrition and season 2's witchy Halloween special. This time, though, Amy is here to talk about something that is incredibly important to her and which should also be incredibly important to all of us: self-care. Hi, Amy. Welcome back to the show.
Hey,
How are you?
me again. I feel like a celebrity on episode 3.
I know. I love it. You are officially the first guest to feature on all 3 seasons of Excuse Me. So I'm thinking I might have to start putting your name in the opening credits with mine. What do you reckon?
I'm so excited.
I love it. Okay, so we are going to talk a little bit about self-care. Sorry. I'm going to start us off with a definition, which it occurred to me, I've never actually looked up the, I guess, official definition of self-care. So I was like, where do I start on this? Because I could tell you a million and one things that I do for self-care. But self-care has been defined as a multi-dimensional, multifaceted process of purposeful engagement in strategies that promote healthy functioning and enhance well-being. Essentially, the term describes a conscious act that a person takes in order to promote their own physical, mental, and emotional health. I mean,
I think the key word in that is conscious, right? Like, you can do a million actions a day autonomously. And I think when you make a conscious decision to do something to enhance your personal well-being, that's what self-care is all about.
when do you think it became that, I guess, self-care became that moment of it? What I'm trying to say, it became less of a selfish thing and more of a mental health and mental well-being thing? Because I remember, like, when I was little, people would take time for themselves and I didn't really consider it to be self-care, but it was almost like self-care was riddled with this guilt. Like, you shouldn't be
Yeah,
doing
definitely.
it. You should be doing something else. You should be, doing anything else other than looking after yourself, essentially.
Yeah. I think, I mean, it's always been there. And I do think that, especially at the beginning of our lifetime anyway, with that generation above us, I don't think it's really become present in today's society until maybe the last 10 years or so, when it's really been a focus and something that people are now aware of. I think especially with COVID in the last 2 years as well, it's really come to the forefront of everyone's mind, because you really do need to look after yourself. No one else is out there looking after you. You have to do it yourself.
Exactly.
Like, I think about our parents, and like, they do things, but I don't know if they do it specifically for self-care.
Such as?
I mean, like, what's an example? I mean, like, my parents go away on holidays and things like that, but it's more, I don't know if they do it with the intention of relaxation and rejuvenation, all of those things. It's like, oh, we can, so we will.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes you should make that decision and be like, okay, I want this particular type of holiday because it's going to serve my mental state right now.
And I think I mean, for me, when you talk about self-care, I think of, like, workplaces introducing mental health days, a lot more conversations that happen now around mental health. I guess I put that towards self-care. And I don't necessarily think, like, let's say right now, as we have this conversation, my glass of wine comes into frame, and a glass of wine after a long day at work, sitting down to do something I enjoy, which is podcasting, is that self-care? I mean, I guess it could be.
Does it make you feel happy?
Yes, most of the time. Usually if I've had too much, I don't feel happy the next day.
Because I think that's the key, and it comes back to that conscious versus autonomous actions. If you, like for me, a cup of tea, it can take 2 minutes to make a cup of tea, but if you actually sit and let the tea steep and do the whole process and make it into an act of self-care where you're being mindful of what you're doing and the reason behind it, that's what makes it different to an autonomous behavior.
True. So in my I feel bad calling it research because it wasn't really much research, but in my preparation for the conversation, it was highlighted to me that there are different types of self-care. So there's physical, social, mental, spiritual, emotional, and they're the top, or I mean, they're the five that were highlighted to me, but obviously there must be others. One of the things on one of the websites I was looking at was questions to ask yourself in relation to each of those different types of self-care. So, for example, physical self-care, the questions that you can ask yourself are you getting adequate sleep? Is your diet fueling your body well? Are you taking charge of your health? Are you getting enough exercise? So if we were to put that into a snapshot of self-care, I'm pretty much going to say no to all of those things. I'm not getting enough adequate sleep. My diet is not fueling my body well because at the minute, I guess let's just say I'm eating my feelings and I'm having a lot of feelings. Am I taking charge of my health? No. And am I getting enough exercise? Definitely not.
Yeah.
But then I guess it kind of comes down to, am I aware of those things that I'm not doing them? And I am. But to be honest, other than, I guess, sleep and fueling your body with the right diet, the other two, like getting exercise, to me, I understand the importance behind it. I understand the self-care behind it. But for me, exercise is a chore. I'm not one of those people that like does it. I know they say it releases endorphins, but I'm sure that's a lie. For me, I think I always consider my self-care more mental, emotional, and spiritual. The other point that they made on here was social, and I found that really interesting to look at the questions that they ask, because it says, are you getting enough face-to-face time with your friends? And what are you doing to nurture your relationships with your friends and family? And for me, just talking for me, most of my really close friends all live overseas, and I don't get face-to-face time with them. And I think, I don't even talk to them as much as I probably should, or at least used to. And I think going through these past 2 years of pandemic, I guess I've never felt the urge to go home more to England and be with my friends, like my chosen family and the family I have over there as well. That pull has never been as strong as it is now. And I think that's a real, I guess, I was going to say draw card. That's not what I'm looking for, but a direct link to having all these lockdowns, having everything that's happened with the pandemic, feeling so far away, that I think it's really highlighted that in terms of social self-care, I'm not doing very well at all.
Right.
Which makes me happy that you and I are going to go for a face-to-face drink tomorrow. So that is
Sure.
nice.
I want to backtrack back to the physical health point as well. And something I've learned in my years of life, because like, as a kid, most people are active, right? Like we're always running around and doing something crazy. And then you graduate high school and you start working, and all of a sudden your free time diminishes a lot. And I mean, my background in physical health, I've only really been going to the gym for the last 5 or 6 years, maybe 4 years consistently, and very sporadically before that. But before the gym, my passion was dancing. I did ballroom and Latin dancing for about 10, 12 years.
And I came to
And to
one
me, that
with you.
Yes, you did. But I feel like that's like a hidden exercise, right? So like if you find something that you genuinely love and that you're passionate about, physical health or like exercise comes easier. But when do we give ourselves the time to try new things, to go to find a new passion?
That's
So
exactly right.
it's important that we there is exercise doesn't just have to be at the gym. It can be elsewhere.
I think,
And I know you love hiking, so I've seen you
yes.
exercise.
So I do it. I just don't seek out the, I
Mhm,
guess, the gym kind of exercise. Incidental
mhm.
exercise is my favorite kind. Like
Definitely, isn't it for
let's
everyone?
yes, like let's go for a nice little walk in nature and have a picnic somewhere.
Mhm.
But we'll have to climb some rocks or whatever to get to the spot we're going
That's
to.
it. Yeah.
That's exercise I'm on board with. But for me, like going
Mhm,
to the gym, and I've tried it, I've done it.
mhm.
It's a chore. I don't like feeling hot and sweaty and gross. And,
Yeah.
naturally I have very curly hair. So that becomes a problem when you get sweaty.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah. That's the thing. And like the thing that got me into gym consistently was doing classes. I found a class that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I can't imagine my week without it. Now it's like I do it every Saturday morning at 7 a.m. and it just sets me up for the weekend.
you mentioned doing classes, and that sort of,
Mhm,
I guess, got you back into going to the gym regularly.
mhm,
It's funny because I know so many people who always recommend classes to me. They like join a gym,
mhm,
go to a class, go to a spin class, do something like that,
mhm.
and you'll get into that momentum. And they all credit it for getting them back in the gym. So maybe that's what I should do.
There's like, it comes down to decision fatigue and lack of guidance as well. Like if you walk into a gym and you don't have a really clear plan of what you're going to do, it's going to be really overwhelming really quickly. Whereas if you rock up to a class, all you have to do is get there and then someone else tells you what to do for the rest of the time. And it kind of takes out the hard work, the hard mental work.
I'm in. I'm in because um, the hard mental work being taken out is a great thing because
That's
mental self-care is also one of the topics that we mentioned. So, questions
it.
to ask yourself around mental health care. Are you making enough time
Mhm.
for activities that mentally stimulate you? Are you doing proactive things to help you stay mentally healthy?
Mhm.
Again, I feel like I neglect my self-care. And it's funny because I'm the first one to tell everybody to go and look after themselves and take a moment and take a day or, have a mental health day, do what you need to do to make you feel good. And then I realize, I don't.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a very common theme for most people as well. I think that we forget to ask ourselves the same questions. Um, Even when it comes to like basic things that some people do, like goal setting or career goals or all of those types of things, like we're always trying to push somebody else into doing the right thing, but we never really give ourselves the push to go do it.
Very true.
um, yeah, I think it comes back to that again, just that conscious decision, put yourself first, ask yourself the questions, answer the questions. Sometimes it's hard to do that, but you have to.
So what does self-care look like for you? Like how does Amy unwind and get back to feeling like Amy?
This is a great example of not practicing what you preach. I I am someone who really, really struggles to take downtime guilt-free. If I'm sitting down and not doing something, I feel terribly guilty because there are things that I could be doing. So self-care for me is actually allocating time, because if I like set a date and time with myself, type A personality here. But if I set a date and a time and I'm like, between this hour and this hour, I'm going to turn off my phone, not be on TikTok, not be on Instagram, and actually just relax and, enjoy nature or go for a walk with headphones on, listening to a podcast or music that makes me happy. Um, Light a candle, have a cup of tea. Those types of things are really self-care-ish to me. But it really does have to be a mental decision and dedication to do it, because I struggle.
I understand that.
Yeah. Mm. I think self-care looks different to everybody, and it really depends on what you need at the time. I know that for some people it would just be, like a 5-minute meditation or something, because it's all they have time for. So I think it's just important to ask yourself what you need at the moment, or what you need this week or this month, to make yourself feel top priority.
I think it's also important, like particularly like you and I, we're married, not to each other, to our beautiful husbands, but we're
Mm-hmm.
married, and there's a million billion trillion people out there who are in relationships or in situations where you're not necessarily given time to yourself. And I think we need to be able to be confident and comfortable enough to be able to say
Mm-hmm.
to those around us, whoever it might be, if it's your significant other, if it's your parents, if it's a roommate, if it's your friends, whatever, that, you know, hey, I'm going to need this space, or I'm going to need this time, and you know, I just need to look after myself for a minute. And I think, you know, it's, you would know that it's been quite a tough past, not almost, let's say 9 months in my household.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't allowed myself to go, okay, this is what I need. I need this time for me,
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, my husband's been going through a lot of things. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess I live in that also kind of like that guilt level where I'm like, what he's going through
Mm-hmm.
is so much more than what I have to complain about. So it's, you know, I don't feel right saying, okay, I'm going to need a day to myself. And
Yeah.
in turn from that, I've really, this past year or so, I've really neglected myself and looking out for myself. At the same time, you know, don't get me wrong, I don't, it's not that bad. Like, I've been a incredibly supportive husband, and I feel like I've ticked some boxes there. Like, I've done a good job,
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, he, to me, he comes first. He always will.
That's
Um,
right. Yeah.
but then at the same time, I still have to be able to put myself first, because there was a quote I read a couple of days ago, and I thought about putting it into the show somewhere. Now I can't remember the quote because, you know, that's, I didn't write it down, but it was something along the lines of the most important relationship that you will ever have in your life is the relationship that you have with yourself. And
100%.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's like one of those sort of, you can't love anybody else until you love yourself kind of quotes. But the way it was worded was very articulate and concise, and it really made me go, you know what, that's absolutely right. Like, you
Very
know,
true.
relationships come and go, people come and go. The one certainty that we all have in this life is that we're all, you know, none of us are getting out alive. So if you can't love yourself and treat yourself with kindness and the respect and everything else that you think everybody else deserves,
Mm-hmm.
then what are you really doing?
100%. I was just having that same conversation with a really close friend of mine the other week, who was going through a really hard time. And as he was explaining the situation to me, I was like, that quote is so true. Like, it's such a Pinteresty quote, but it is like, if you don't give yourself the care and love and support that you need as an individual, it's not up to anyone else to provide that for you. And if you're not getting it from yourself, you can't really give it to anyone else wholeheartedly. Um, yeah, you do have to look after yourself first, because if you're tired and run down, what type of care are you providing to others?
Exactly. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in the past, probably, let's say, probably since the end of January, it was really actually since I started getting season 3 of the podcast up and running, I've been able to turn to Benny and say, okay, I'm doing this now.
Mm-hmm.
And to which I don't know what I was thinking he was going to do before. Like, is he going to be some sort of ogre? No. But to my surprise, he's like, yeah, okay, that's what you need. I'm like, why didn't I why didn't I communicate this sooner? What's my problem?
I'm in a very similar situation as you as well. My husband's been going through a hell of a last 3 years. They've lost a family member and a family pet, and he's been separated from his family due to COVID. And it's taken such a huge toll on him. And it's funny that, like, you bring this up as well, because, like, to me, my way of providing care to him is always being with him. I'm like, what do you need? Like, what can I do for you? And he's like, I actually just need space. Like, okay, fine. Like, I'll go do my own thing. But, like, yeah, it's just funny because we all need different things at different times. So you kind of need to be aware of what you need and give it to yourself.
It's that
And
great
sometimes it
life
is
lesson of
for other
balance.
people. All right.
I was just saying, it's that great life lesson of balance. Like it's all about balance.
That's right.
Now, you made mention earlier when you and I were before the show. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there was a real, I can't think what it is now. I'm such a bad listener. Sorry. This is why I talk on the show. You made mention that of really pinpointing the difference between self-care and something else.
Yeah,
Let's take a look at that.
self-maintenance. Yeah,
Self-maintenance.
yeah. So on in my research, which was mainly online and through Pinterest, um, for me, there's a lot of, and through YouTube, through the people that I've been following for a long time as well, who usually do self-care videos. There's a lot of things that fall under self-care that are truly self-maintenance. And I think that we need to separate self-maintenance from self-care. And again, this could be on a spectrum. It could look different for everybody. But I think self-maintenance are like those bare minimum things that we need to do to survive as a human being. So eating and drinking, for example, like anyone could eat McDonald's and drink Coke, but is it really nourishing your body? So I think like that's a great example between the difference of one's a necessity and then one's a conscious decision of doing something good for yourself. How do you feel about that?
Well, let me just say, as I'm getting older, I require more self-maintenance. Like the the roots have to be dyed like every couple of weeks now. It's crazy. Don't get old, people. Don't get old. Um, so but no, I get what you're saying. Like, I think it comes back down to that, what you were saying at the start of the show, at the top of the show, was that, it's about making a particular choice or a decision. So yeah, sure, you could eat the junk food, but is that going to serve you physically, mentally, or spiritually, all of those things, that the points that we mentioned earlier on? If you're going to go and get a big greasy burger from the local burger chain, how is that going to impact and support your self-care? Like, and this is something that I don't often talk about, but years and years and years ago, when I was 18 and I just came out, there was a lot of pressure and issues and, a lot of my own mental stuff. And for a very brief moment in time, I went down the binge and purge section of the eating disorder spectrum, in which I felt I was losing weight and I was told, how great I looked. And I felt like, I guess I was living for that praise. And
Such
on
a
a couple, very toxic.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is with that, just on a side note, is that the people who were saying these things, it wasn't coming from a toxic place. It was me taking it in and going, ha, 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 how can I get more of this? But yeah, I totally can relate to that sort of thing. Like, sure, a celery stick might not make you feel as good as a greasy burger does straight away, but the regret, hence the binge, hence the purge, it's not healthy in any which way, shape, or form. I'm not gonna lie, I had McDonald's for breakfast this morning because I woke up, I was hungry. There was nothing, it's a lie, there was stuff in the house. There was nothing that I was craving in the house. And I was like, you know what? I really want hash browns from McDonald's and a coffee. So almond milk coffee, 2 hash browns, breakfast is done. Don't feel bad about it. Served a purpose, made me feel good. And then I got on with my day and I had a big day. Like, I was moving a lot of stock around and I was very active all day, incidental exercise, which in turn made me feel productive, made me feel good, made me feel positive to come home and go and log onto the computer, pour myself a glass of wine and have a chat with a good friend about self-care. Like, in terms of self-care, I think I've done an okay job looking after myself today. But I can't do that every day.
No, and I guess that's the thing as well. Like, every day is different. And again, it comes down to that like spectrum of what it looks like to each individual person, because everything that we need at the time is going to be different from everyone around us. But I think it's about being in tune with yourself. And if you have had a crazy day and it's been completely out of your control, what can you do when you get home to kind of like give yourself some downtime and unwind from the crazy day that you've had. Sometimes it's as easy as jumping in the shower. Sometimes it takes more than that, but it changes from day to day.
Exactly.
And it's funny you mentioned that story, because 3.5 years ago, when me and my husband decided to go plant-based, I wasn't expecting him to say yes to that journey. I was expecting him to say hell no. But I told him, I was like, I don't ever want you to feel guilty about eating anything. Like, if you feel like you want something because it's going to make you happy, please go for it. Like, I'm not here to be a strict teacher telling you yes or no, you can't eat that. I want you to do what's going to make you happy. And he's been so good and so supportive. And it's like, his parents are just here now from Canada, and she was like, let me cook for you. And I was like, no, like, I really love cooking, like, let me show you. And she's like, you're going to teach me? And I'm like, yes, like, I'm so excited to share this with you, because they've seen how well we're doing, and they don't want to interrupt, but they want to take it on and take it home with them, which is really
So
cute.
they don't eat a plant-based diet at the moment, or they do?
No, his dad does kind of, but I mean, we've all grown up Italian, like, everything revolves around processed meat and cheese. So it's a big shift. So it's going to be really interesting. They've gone out for dinner with my parents tonight, so I haven't actually been able to cook for them yet, but it's something I'm really looking forward to sharing with them. I think it's going to be really exciting.
And that in itself is an act of, I want to say it's an act of self-care, because you're taking time for your in-laws and with your in-laws, and at the same time you're doing something you love, you're imparting wisdom, you're sharing that. It's opportunity for growth for all parties. To me, that sounds like it falls in the spectrum of self-care.
I think so too.
So Amy, you mentioned earlier that about obviously the topic is self-care, but you mentioned about self-maintenance. Is there anything else you've got in your little bag of tricks?
I would love to give you my version of the definitions between the two and how they differ. So for self-care, I've got providing needs. So if you think about caring for somebody else, what type of things would you do for them, and what type of questions would you ask them to find out what type of care that they were requiring? And then I've got self-maintenance down as the preserving your current condition, which I think is an interesting one. It comes back to those bare basics again. Like, what do you do on a daily basis that keep you how you are now, but not necessarily improving?
That's an interesting way to look at it. I like that. Preserving the way you are now. And then
self-love.
Self-love. This is what I'm on board with.
Oh, it's something I don't think any of us do enough. And I was discussing these topics with my husband a couple of days ago in preparation for tonight. And I was like, when was the last time you told yourself you loved yourself? And he was like,
that kind of self-love.
I've done that. Yeah.
Not the other kind of self-love.
I mean, like, when was the last time that many of us have, like, looked in a mirror and been like, okay, I actually look all right today, and like congratulated yourself for doing something hard or something you really didn't want to do, but you did it and it turned out okay. Like, do we ever take the time to celebrate those small wins with ourselves?
No is the main answer to that. But it's just okay. I'm known at work, in my old job. I'm always known as the guy with the hair. Right. So if I'm having a good hair day, or that's literally the only time I'm like, yeah, you're looking good. Yeah, I don't like, I guess I have more, not self-hatred, that's too dark. So I'm more self-critical than I am, as opposed to self-love and saying, you know what, you've done good, kid. Like, a friend of mine and a friend of the show, Rochelle Lindquist, I always refer to her as my biggest cheerleader, because, and maybe this is an act of self-care for myself, I don't know, but if I'm feeling crappy about something, or she's a good friend, she's very intuitive, but if I'm down or whatever, she's always the very first person, even, no offense to the husband, even before Benny, she's always the first person to go, hang on. And she does it for him as well, where she's like, this is what you've done, this is what you've been through, or this is what you've achieved. Or she's really good at highlighting everybody's successes. and really praising that and playing to that and making you feel really, really good about yourself. But then, when the
Yeah.
call is over, you forget.
Yeah.
Like, we're
It's sad
so
that we do.
self-critical. So
We
sad.
really are. It's so important having those people in your lives too. Like, unfortunately, with my work, we've had a lot of staff changeover in the time that I've been there. And some of the people that have left were truly the biggest cheerleaders I've ever had in my life. And it's nice knowing that they've left and I still have that person. It's just unfortunate that I don't get that little cheer every day because I really miss it. But it's so important to have those people that you can go to when you've got something going on, and they're always going to build you up.
I often sometimes, like, if it's been a really rough time of it, or I'm getting really, snappy, and the husband can identify that Shaun probably needs something right now. He's really good at, if he can't provide it, or he thinks he can't provide it, or maybe he's just that in tune with me that he just knows things intuitively. But he's like, you need to go see your mum, because she's such a positive energy in the world, and she can make sense of any situation for you. And she's like Michelle, she's a big, she's everybody's cheerleader. He can tell when I need some mum time, and he'll be like, go see your mum. And I think that's really important to, and as you say, you have those people and those connections. And for me, a lot of those people and connections I left behind years ago when I moved here, and I've never been able to, not that I would replace them, but I've never been able to, I guess, meet people that I've connected with on that level, in the sense that, they were the people I met when I was going through the biggest change of my life, when I was coming out and coming to terms with who I was. And then these people were supporters, and a lot of them were in the same boat, and we became each other's family. And that, that kind of formative years, I've never had that here. So to have my mum here is really helpful when I'm needing some, some positivity and light.
And guidance.
Yeah.
I think guidance is something that, especially over the last 2 years, I think a lot of people have been lacking, and it's so anxiety inducing. Terrifying.
This whole 2 years has been anxiety inducing. And then now we have the Ukraine and Russia, and what will eventuate with that. Like, petrol, it's just one thing after another. And it's so stressful.
Definitely.
It's so stressful. And we all forget to take a minute. And with everything going up in price too, that sort of, one of my big self-care things, well, you can tell me if this is self-care or self-maintenance, is, every now and again, when I'm feeling crappy and I'm feeling down and I'm feeling, pretty tough on myself, I'll go to a fancy salon and get my hair did. They give you a little massage, they give you a coffee or a glass of wine, and it's relaxing, and I leave feeling really positive.
I actually had notes written down about this because I'm a really strong believer and advocate for living within your means. So, like, not everyone can afford to go get their hair done, right? But the people that can, if you can afford to go and do that for yourself, and it doesn't have to be all the time, if it's like once every 3 to 6 months, totally self-care. I had the same hairdresser for about 13 years, maybe even longer than that. And recently she stopped doing hair. So I had to find a new hairdresser. And oh my gosh, I was so anxious because I was like, I've always colored my hair at home. Like, they're going to be so angry at me. And they have been the most accommodating people. And actually, I follow them on Instagram. I found out that for people with severe social anxiety, they actually have private rooms that they can put people in for your whole hair treatment. And I was like, how people? So salons are totally self-care. There's an author who wrote a book called Best Self. He's a life coach. His name's Mike Bayer. I don't know how you pronounce his last name. But when it comes to self-care, he has, I believe it's 7 different areas. And how I've implemented them into my life is at the end of each month, I kind of do a check-in on myself, and I rate these 7 areas on a scale of 1 to 10. And then I know what my focus is for the next month.
I'm intrigued.
Can I share that?
Yes,
okay.
please.
So he calls the system his spheres, and it is an acronym. So social, personal, health, employment, relationships, education, and spiritual. So we've already talked about some. something I want to talk about with you from this list that I think both of us have been through because we've worked together in the past is employment.
Yes. What about employment?
So, self-care and employment, what do you think? Because just because you're in a job, right, doesn't mean you're necessarily happy in the job. Sometimes you have to hold the job because you need the income. But what have you noticed since our past employment experience that you've done that has made yourself feel better about going to work? Because that place wasn't terrible. Let's just say that's fine.
Yeah, no, it
But
was
like
good.
I've noticed now that like something I didn't realize was important to me that has come up since being at my new place of employment is being able to express my personality. And not only being able to express
Yes.
my personality, but being celebrated for it. And I think that that was something that was really taken away then that I didn't realize had such a big impact on me until I had it in my life.
Well, yeah, look, I think one of the biggest freedoms that happened for me, and I don't want to be that guy that talks about his hair again, but my
But
entire
it's
life,
true though, right?
yeah, my
Mm-hmm.
entire life, I'd wanted long hair. Never sort of been ballsy enough to do it because I think society, the pressure I felt from society to, as a boy, you have short hair, but even as a gay man, I was like, well, that's going to just be too feminine, and I'll be judged for it in a
Mm-hmm.
different way. And then when we were working together, I wanted to grow it out several times, and there were very strict grooming
Mm-hmm.
guidelines. In later on, I found out that a guideline is a guideline, and it doesn't have to be as rigid as certain people made it. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, for me, that was the first thing. As soon as I left that job, I started to grow my hair out, and actually started to really feel more like my true self. And I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
that was also just a part of, you know, getting a little bit older and getting a little bit wiser and learning from some experiences that obviously had to happen through that position and that time of my life. But
Mm-hmm.
I certainly now feel more like me than I've ever felt. And
Yeah.
when I do reflect and look back at the time in that job, I think the people make the place. And
100%. Mm-hmm.
when we were there, for the majority of the time, it was incredible people, and everybody had a great time, and everybody had a great connection, or for the most part. And
Mm-hmm.
it really, I think that sort of makes you stay in a
Mm-hmm.
position, even if there are repressive aspects of something. You kind of
Yeah,
can,
definitely.
you almost push it down and overlook it because, you know, it's such a nice place and everybody here is so lovely and friendly, and we've got great friends from that place.
We
And
really do. I mean,
you know, and that
lifelong
yeah,
too. Mm-hmm.
100%. And to be fair, many of them have been on the show.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think for me, leaving, it was really about learning to, I guess, just accept it and be able to be myself. So when, you know, for a little bit of context, when I left, you know, for a little bit of context, go listen to the very first episode of the podcast because that clears it all up. But when I left, I was going through a really, really rough mental health stage of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it was dark, and it was bad, and it was repressive, and it was intentionally or not, it was fueled, those negative feelings were fueled by that position I held within that company. And I
Mm-hmm.
still, to this day, I still love that company. I think they're great.
Mm-hmm.
No problems with them whatsoever. It was just an internal thing.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
after leaving that position and learning to sort of, I guess, embrace myself, love myself a little bit more, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, allow myself the freedom to say, because I guess, you know what, I will say the first big act of self-care I did was allowing myself to leave that job.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the time I was very much known for my position in that job, and I'd had a whole career planned out in my head with that one company, and I was quite
Mm-hmm.
willing to never leave. And
Yeah.
through everything that happened, I had to turn to myself and go, this is not a safe place for you anymore mentally. This is not a healthy place for you anymore mentally. And you need, in order to be able to keep going, and I know that sounds drastic, but in my head, that's how it was. In order for you to be able to keep going, you need to leave this behind. And that was my first real, I guess, obviously many before that, but that was my first real act of real self-care, self-maintenance, and probably self-love all rolled into one, where I've gone, it has to change. And I'm the only one that can change it for me.
That's right.
Oh, we got deep.
We did.
Whew. Gonna need to sip of wine.
And again, nothing wrong with that place of work. I was completely happy to work there. I was there for over 7 years. But yeah, leaving, and then when you rediscover who you are as a person, it's so empowering. And you're like, I probably could have done this sooner, but I didn't know how, or I wasn't able to, or these things pop up afterwards, and you don't really realize at the time that you needed this for self-care or self-love.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in the fact that we discover things when they needed to be discovered. And I'm the half full kind of guy who's like, everything happens for a reason, and always look on the bright side, all those triggering things that we say to ourselves and each other. I very much try to live in that positive mindset. And I think 7 years with that company, that's amazing on anything. And yes, you should congratulate yourself for everything that you did for them and with them in your tenure that you were there. But don't look back and go, I should have left earlier, because in my mindset is everything happened the way that it was supposed to happen. You learned the lessons that you were supposed to learn while you were there, and you moved on when you were ready to move on, when you had the strength to, or the courage to, or just that you were just so pissed off with it that fueled it. Like whatever happened, and it happens for a reason. I do believe that.
Agreed.
We did take a real drastic sort of personal turn in talking about that, but that's I think mental health in the workplace and being able to show yourself self-care in the workplace comes in all different shapes and forms. And it is incredibly important, because we spend so much of our time at work. We see our work families more than we see our own families a lot of the time. And so it has to be a place where you're comfortable and you can be free to be yourself, and you can, let your freak flag fly a little bit. And you need to be able to talk to your boss or whomever and say, hey, I'm going to need a day this week. And if that company can't understand that, or can't offer you that, or even offer some sort of compromise, maybe there's a staffing issue or something, who knows. But if you're working with a company who don't recognize that, then that opens up a bigger Pandora's box of, ridiculous questions that the company might need to ask itself. Because
especially nowadays too.
Yeah, like nowadays you'll see in adverts for jobs that they're like, you get your birthday off as a free paid day off. And, there's all these sort of draw cards that I think people have realized people are going to do anyway. People are going to take a day off. People, if you're having a tough time, or, you need a mental health day, you're going to take it regardless. So companies, I think, on some level have had to come on board and sort of promote that. And it also shows from an outside perspective that they're doing everything that they can to, look after their people. And they have to do that now, because we're a population, the majority of us, I'm sure there are a few out there who, are like, take a spoonful of cement and harden up or whatever. But we're a generation of people who are not as willing to sacrifice ourselves for a thankless job.
That's it.
We're learning as a populace, the human race is learning to put themselves first. And it's actually so not selfish to turn around to somebody and say, I need this. And if they can't come on board and they can't accept it, that's not, that's when you have to learn to go, okay, well, you know what, this is not a me problem. It's like if you were in a relationship and you said to your partner, I need this. and they deny you that. They're like, no, we're doing this instead, or we're doing this, or they don't understand, or they're not willing to understand. That's a toxic relationship. So would you be in a toxic relationship with yourself? I mean, I know.
But we can be, because it
We
comes
can
back to
be.
that inner, right?
Yeah. So yeah, it's such this entire topic of self-care is so interesting, because even like just the conversation itself, knowing that you and I were going to have it, I really thought we were going to go down a, let's talk about meditation and green tea and, all of these nice, multifaceted, fun little things that we can do to really look after our inner being. Yet we haven't. Like we've
No,
obviously touched on it.
it's a lot deeper than that. And those things are important. And as we said before, self-care and self-maintenance looks completely different for everybody. So it's pretty hard to say what specific thing would make everybody feel better. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's something different for everyone. And I will say this, I feel like I like having the deeper conversations. Sometimes I like having the awkward conversations or the uncomfortable conversations. And I really think that this has been on the spectrum of self-care for me. Just, venting, talking, reminiscing, having that FaceTime. And I know we're not physically with each other, but we can see each other, which helps. But having that FaceTime with somebody you care about and that you can connect with, and really, like, it's, sometimes all you need is a good friend and a glass of wine or a cup of tea.
No, and I think like when you asked me to do this podcast with you and I put my hand up for this specific episode, I really wanted it to be more thought-provoking. And if we can encourage one person to ask themselves a question today of what do they need, I feel like we've done our job.
Yeah, 100%. What are you going to do this weekend which will fulfill your self-care, self-maintenance, and self-love?
Oh, okay. Okay, so I, again, A-type personality over here. In my planner, so I've been doing the bullet journal method for about 7 years, I think now, which is a whole other topic. But basically, at the end of every week, I do like a personal check-in with my highlights, what I could have done better, and what my focus is for the week coming up. So that's kind of like my self-care-ish, because it's like an internal reflection again of like what I need to do for the week after. Self-maintenance, I am going to self-maintenance is a hard one for me because I kind of do everything and I don't really class it as self-care. So like Saturdays are like my big hair washing day, and I'll do a face mask and all of those types of niceties
That
that you don't
is
do
so self-care.
So that's what I'll be doing on Saturday. And self-love, I guess my sister is up from Melbourne this weekend, so we're going to be having a huge family dinner with my in-laws included. So I think that's going to be my self-love, because I'm going to be surrounding myself with my family, and that's my happy place.
I love this.
What about you?
Nothing. I'm going to do nothing.
Nothing. The episode's wasted.
I know, right? I learned nothing from this. You're fired. No, you're not co-host anymore. No, I think for me, self-care this weekend, my weekend starts tomorrow night. So I'm going to go from there. I'm going to see you tomorrow night and face to face. We're going to have some cocktails. We're going to have chat. That's going to be definitely part of my self-care. It's actually Benny's friend, or our friend Jody. It's her 40th birthday this weekend. So happy birthday, Jody. We will be going out to the Husk Distillery in northern New South Wales for a tour of the gin distillery. And as a good English boy, I'm sure I'll drink some gin, which self-care. And then we're actually going to karaoke. So that's also self-care for me. self-maintenance for me, I'm going to spend some time on myself. I think I'm going to be a bit like you and do probably
Mhm.
Sunday for me. I'll do a face mask and wash my hair and set myself up mentally for another week at work. And in terms of self-love, I'm actually going to, you know what, my self-love, I'm going to look back at the week and I'm going to tell myself the things I did well. I'm going to take a leaf out of your book and maybe be a little bit more reflective and,
Mhm.
congratulate myself for moving stock around today and reorganizing
Important.
things. And yeah, that's
You'll
it.
start
That's it.
Monday and you'll be like, I'm a new man.
Yeah. And then Tuesday will come and I'll be like, who was that guy?
We should do that again next week.
Yeah. That mug is ridiculous. I love it. It's
Cute. It's actually
huge.
color changing as well. Just fun fact for the audience. It's
See,
great.
that just on a side note, that to me sounds like self-care. I'm going to purchase myself something that makes me happy.
That's it.
I love it. Amy, thank you so much for spending the time with me tonight and coming on the show once again. I know the listeners love you, so thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This has been a great conversation. I'm so
It,
excited to do this with you.
yeah, I wonder what the edit's going to be like. How much will I cut out? How brave am I going to be? Thank you, Amy. Love your guts, and I'll see you tomorrow night.
Yes, I'm so excited. We'll see you tomorrow.
Well, guys, that's a wrap on today's episode. Once again, I'd like to say a big thank you to the always insightful and always lovely Amy Lucivero for coming on and sharing her thoughts and experiences with all of us. I'd love to know how you all practice self-care and self-love. How do you look after yourselves physically and mentally when times are tough, and what practices really work for you? So get in touch through the show's socials and let me know. Just search excuseme_pod on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok and slide yourselves right into my DMs. If you've enjoyed this episode and enjoy practicing intentional self-care techniques, then I would highly recommend that you go and check out our season 2 episode on mindfulness and the Enneagram with the engaging and inspiring Rachel Hayek. As always, links are in the show notes for you guys. But that's all from me for now, so stay safe, look after each other, and I'll see you next time.